1 hour down, 3 to go. And we are joined, as we often are, and we are lucky to be joined by Brett Siegel at a time like this. Hopefully, Brett can make the good people of Sacramento and the surrounding Sacramento areas feel better. Brett, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Alan. How are you?
I can't complain, Brett. I mean, I have been complaining about the Kings, but besides that, I cannot complain. Let's start here, Brett. Are we really already here 5 games into the season? Are we really going to have some conversations about maybe a fire sale, whatever that looks like, 5 games into the season? I think, Brett, the Keegan Murray thing just derailed what could have been a surprising season for the Kings, but without him and him not coming back for 20 games, whatever it is, are we really going to do this, Brett? Because they're already 1-4. It's not going to get easier. They get the Bucks on Saturday. I don't really see a path to the Kings making it out of this cave, Brett.
Well, unlike other organizations, particularly in the West, that are heading in a different direction and most likely going to be tanking soon, the Kings aren't necessarily there yet. I mean, things don't look good. The schedule certainly does not look good moving forward with the amount of playoff teams and high competition that they're going to play. But like you mentioned, Keegan Murray's injured. They're hoping to get him back sometime within the next 4 or 5 weeks, I think, is kind of the timeline that we're looking at right now. But can they even survive to that point? That's really the big question. Zach LaVine's played well. I think that Kings fans need to be pleased with the way that he started the season, and you can't complain about Zach LaVine and who he is to this Kings organization. It's just the contract is not good, but hey, if he's going to be playing like this, he's going to be your leader, and so be it. It's just their supporting cast is not up to the standards with how you need to compete in today's NBA, where you need size. The big man's coming back, and we're seeing a lot of teams roll out 2 big guys in some lineups. You need consistent perimeter shooting, which I don't feel like the Kings have necessarily had to begin the season. They've had good perimeter shooting. It hasn't been terrible, but it hasn't been consistent through all their performances. And then the third thing is just athleticism. And when you look at this roster, it's just a bunch of older players, and obviously Sabonis is not the most athletic big man. So what are you left with? You're left with a team that you're hoping can defend well, and that has not been the case at all this season. So they're just a team that is honestly assembled 10 years too late. If this team was assembled back in the mid-2010s, they'd be a contender in the West. But right now, with the style of play in the NBA and the amount of athleticism and depth that exists with all these teams, especially in the West, it's just really hard to see how this team can be competitive.
Talking to Brett Siegel, national NBA insider and reporter for Clutch Points. Brett, when is it going to be realistic that things could start happening? Obviously, the trade deadline is not till February, and in years past, we've seen some things. We know some players become available in December, more players become available in January. The Kings are a bit stuck right now because we can have a blow-it-up conversation all we want. All these other teams are assessing, like normal teams, all these other teams, I shouldn't say all of them because we'll talk about the Pelicans in a second, but majority of the other NBA teams are still assessing what in the world they have. So the Kings, even if they wanted to blow it up, they're stuck right now. My question is, for how long?
Yeah, it's going to be a holding pattern past Thanksgiving, most likely into the holiday season, until they get Keegan Murray back, because that's really kind of a big piece to the puzzle for them of the three-point shooting, the athleticism, kind of that new age player that can do a little bit of everything for the Kings. And when you fit him in with Sabonis, you fit him in with Zach LaVine, who's a dynamic player on the wing, and some of these other guys, maybe all of a sudden the Kings find something, especially once that schedule lightens up. Because when you preview ahead of the teams that they're going to be playing, over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks, favored in any of these games. You got Golden State, Denver, Milwaukee, OKC, San Antonio, who looks like a potential contender this season with Wembanyama. So all these Western Conference teams that they're going to play, it's kind of a blessing in disguise that they're going to get them out of the way now while Keegan Murray is out. Because, yeah, maybe they tank a little bit at the beginning of the season. Maybe they're near the bottom of the standings. But we've seen teams be able to flip the script heading into a new year before. We've seen teams be able to start rebounding and getting on the right track after the All-Star break. And so when I look at that late December schedule and early January, there's opportunity there for the Kings to kind of make up some ground while these other Western Conference teams will be beating up on each other. Maybe the Kings can start getting some wins against these East teams and lower West teams once Keegan Murray returns. I look at in January how they kind of start things off with the Celtics and the Phoenix Suns, and then you have matchups with the Bucks, the Mavericks, and the Warriors. So maybe there's opportunity to kind of turn things around with Keegan Murray coming back and with guys kind of looking at the trade deadline and being like, well, we don't want to leave. We want to stay here. And maybe they start playing a little bit better. There's a lot of if to this right now, and it's really hard to project 2 months from now what this team is going to look like. But as far as when we could see potential moves and when that talk is going to start happening, if we could be on the move, it's not going to happen until after Thanksgiving of when those conversations will start being had and when teams really start looking at their foothold in the standings, and then they view Sacramento as a potential trade partner.
Talking to Brett Siegel, national NBA insider and reporter. Well, Brett, you said the magic word. Feels like a while since we had this conversation. But Jonathan Kuminga has been on a tear with the Warriors. They look great. Been watching them with all their 8,000 national games that they're going to continue to have. Well, how do you assess Jonathan Kuminga so far? Only a couple games into the season. This has been exactly what the Warriors wanted, him to buy into this specific style of play. I've been seeing, Brett, some people don't really buy it. Some people think he's just playing the game right now, and at some point he'll get tired of it. What do you make of Jonathan Kuminga's start with the Warriors? Do you think all is forgotten and he might even stay with this team past this season, or is it everybody is playing nice right now?
Well, there's two things here. One, he has been spectacular to begin the year. He's been the best version of himself that he's been in the NBA. He seems to have a strong foothold on what his role is going to be with the Warriors, and he even got that confirmation from Steve Kerr, who came out and said he's going to be a starter moving forward, and that's not even going to be a question. So I think that definitely instills a lot of confidence in Kuminga, and it's exactly what he wanted to hear last season from the Warriors. And maybe it just took a year for them to get to this point, but he's been playing spectacular. He's been everything that they've wanted. And the second thing is winning cures all in this league. We see all the time of coaches being on the hot seat, players wanting out, potential changes being made. And then all of a sudden the team goes on a run. They maybe make the postseason and go farther than they were supposed to, and all is cured. And a great example of that is Mike Budenholzer with the Milwaukee Bucks several years ago when they went on to win a championship. He was going to be fired if they didn't make the NBA Finals, and that bought him an extra year. Obviously, things have played out differently in Milwaukee how they would have wanted to, but that's just one of the many examples of how winning in this league changes a lot of philosophies for organizations because there's such a small margin for error, and these front offices and many personnel that are with the team are on the clock to win right when they are hired. And so when you look at this situation with Jonathan Kuminga, a little bit different because the Warriors don't operate like that where everybody's on the clock and they're going to constantly make moves. They're very methodical, very thought through with all the moves that they make. And so bringing Jonathan Kuminga back to an essential position that they don't have anybody else to replace him, and now he's playing at this kind of level, he's happy. Steve Kerr seems happy. The Warriors veterans are thrilled with the position that they're in right now. They truly feel like that they are the best team in the Western Conference and that they can win a championship this year. And with that said, there's not going to be any conversations about them trading Jonathan Kuminga if this continues. Whether or not the relationship is better, whether or not it's just a mask that they're putting on, who knows? But Kuminga's happy, the Warriors are happy, and that's kind of that at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter if they're winning games. That's just that's the most important thing. Obviously, Kuminga wants to get his, but doing it in the way he's doing it, he is kind of getting his, and the Warriors are winning. Talking to Brett Siegel, national NBA insider and reporter for Clutch Points. Brett, I believe it was Sam Amick at the beginning of the season, or right before the season started, there was a report about scouts at the preseason games and how scouts are monitoring the Kings to see where this thing goes. Well, this is why they were monitoring the Kings. This is exactly, now they didn't know Keegan Murray was going to be injured, but it worked out that way, and now the Kings are staring at 1-4 right there in the face. Who do you think is actually movable this season? We spent so much time on Zach LaVine and his contract, but even Domantas Sabonis lately, he had 18 last night, and it was a kind of a throwback game for Domantas Sabonis, and I say that because his usage has changed a little bit. He's making $40+ million. If this thing really does go in that direction, obviously the Kings, I don't think would move off of a Keegan Murray they can't because they signed him to that extension. Right. But besides that, who do you think when those scouts are in the building, they're actually monitoring, would be willing to say, all right, let's give it a go and see what we can do?
Well, the two names I've heard the most of who scouts are watching and other organizations are kind of paying attention to, one is Devin Carter. And we've talked about this countless times, Allen, where he has been available since before the Summer League. He was available in the Jonathan Kuminga trade saga. He was available after that, and they were talking to teams about it. When they were doing the Dennis Schroeder sign and trade, Devin Carter was an option to be included in that as well. So it just doesn't seem like that Devin Carter is a player that is in this new front office plans, and it seems like that they're going to be moving forward with Keon Ellis, Nick Clifford, and these veteran guards that they've brought in, and it doesn't seem like that there's going to be a market for Malik Monk either, so it seems like they're going to be holding on to him. Anything can change between now and the trade deadline. We got 3-4 months to get there, so lots can happen. A lot of injuries around the league can happen, and philosophies can change, but that's kind of where we're at right now with the Kings backcourt, of things kind of staying status quo other than Devin Carter being on the block. And the other guy that scouts have been watching is DeMar DeRozan, because they want to see at 36 years old and having just kind of one more year left on his contract in terms of having that non-guarantee clause and whatnot, they want to see if he can be a guy that can play next to stars and be a part of a contending team. And I think that he can be. He's shown that his entire career that he can be an alpha in some lineups. He can be the number 2 option. And this season, he's playing off of LaVine. He's not being the main facilitator and the guy bringing the ball up the floor. He's letting LaVine dictate the offense. And I think that in terms of anything that's been successful for the Kings to this point, I think that has been a positive, where those two can play off of each other and they're continuing the success that they had playing off one another with the Chicago Bulls. So what does the future look like for DeMar DeRozan? Again, a little too early to speculate, but $24.7 million, very movable contract compared to other guys around this league. And I think that we are going to see a potential deal for DeRozan. It's just a matter of what kind of team is going to want to get him. Is it one that wants to get money off their books for next season? Or is it a team that's going to look to bring him in to be a number 2, number 3 option on a contending team? Or maybe there's another team in the East or West that sees their star player go down with an injury. They have the ability to trade for a $20 million contract, and they go out and get DeRozan, who's a proven guy that has won in the playoffs before. So that's kind of what we're looking at with those two guys. You mentioned Domantas Sabonis. I don't see any scenario in which the Kings would move him unless he requested a trade. Even then, I think that there would be pushback from the organization because they do love Sabonis. He's their franchise player. He's the face of the franchise after they traded De'Aaron Fox to the San Antonio Spurs last season. But again, we'll see what happens with the Kings and where they're at come time for the holidays in December. Once the calendar flips to 2026, are they going to be at the bottom of the West standings, and will that be enough for Sabonis to say, you know what, I want out? Or is he bought into what Doug Christie and Scott Perry and this organization are selling him right now? So, again, it's not the answer that Kings fans want to hear of being in a holding pattern, but you kind of have the roster that you do right now, and that's that. You just got to see what the rest of the league looks like.
Just a couple more for you, Brett, but one just popped into my head because – this guy was on a yacht and he was on his couch and now he's a starter for the Sacramento Kings. And even though it's a non-guaranteed contract, you never know. Maybe you could get something for him. Give me your initial thoughts on Russell Westbrook. Is there a world where I know the Rockets are rocking and rolling, no pun intended, along, but they kind of they might need a point guard at some point, some of these other teams. Is there any world where Russell Westbrook, if he keeps playing like this, gains some value? And I'm not saying the Kings get a first rounder or anything like that, but maybe some reclamation project or a second rounder, something back for Westbrook if this thing goes a bit squirrely?
Maybe. It really depends on what these other teams' philosophies are that would need a point guard, whether that's the Pacers, whether that's the Houston Rockets. And looking at the Rockets' cap situation in particular, the reason that they couldn't go out and sign a guy like Russell Westbrook is because they're hard capped at the first apron. They're about $1.2 million from that line. And to sign a guy to a minimum contract, it's $2.2 million. So automatically, in order to get Russell Westbrook, they would have had to trade somebody and then sign him, and it didn't make sense for them to do that at the time. Could they trade for Westbrook? That's an interesting situation. Maybe you could swap a minimum contract on your roster, whether that's an Aaron Holiday and Deshaun Tate, and a second-round pick to go get Westbrook, because I'm sure the Kings would do that if they're getting a second-round pick out of it. Why not? So Is it a reasonable scenario to believe? Sure, it's certainly something that you could talk about, but again, it depends on what these teams look like heading into the trade deadline, and obviously what kind of opportunity comes way for some of these other guys on the Rockets roster, for example. Like, what does Reed Shepherd look like between now and February? Is he going to be a guy that steps up to be their point guard? What about Aaron Holiday? Does he find a role as a team's point guard? So a lot of questions that are left unanswered right now and that we need answers to before we can definitively say, yes, Russell Westbrook's going to be on the move, or yes, DeMar DeRozan is going to be traded by the Kings. A lot of basketball just needs to play out, and that's just the simple answer.
Brett Siegel, national NBA insider and reporter for Clutch Points. Last one for you, Brett. Are there any other teams that the league circles are monitoring? Again, I know it's still very, very early. And look, when you lose these games, Brett, this is where we have to go. I wish we were talking about the Kings in a 4-1 start, and we would just be talking about the product on the court. But that's not been the situation, so we have to see what else is out there. But as far as other teams that might be in a similar position as the Kings, who do you see as far as monitoring what is going on? I know the Magic, huge expectations for them with that Desmond Bane deal. They've struggled early. I know it's really early for them, but is there any world where there's a fire sale? Hey, let's trade each other's problems for the other and see what happens there. Any other teams that league circles are monitoring to say, hey, if this doesn't figure itself out, they might have to go in a different direction as well?
Yeah, I don't think anything is going to happen with the Magic. They're confident in the group that they have. I personally believe that they're going to turn it around. They just gotten off to a slow start. And with the East being as wide open as it is, all they need to do is string together 3 or 4 wins, and all of a sudden they're back in the top of the picture. So I don't really see the Magic being in a desperation mode at all. Maybe the Toronto Raptors would do something. We've seen R.J. Barrett's name on the trade market since the offseason, since even before the trade deadline last season. There were some murmurs about him possibly being on the move. So that's a player to watch, and he's had a strong start to the season in Toronto. But the one team that everybody's kind of watching of what's going to happen in the West is the New Orleans Pelicans. And we just reported on it this morning at Clutch Points, me and our Pelicans reporter, Chris Dodson, that the Pelicans are holding serious internal discussions about moving on from head coach Willie Green. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about doing so in the offseason, and then the organization decided to back Willie Green and fired David Griffin. They hired Joe Dumars instead. Well, Dumars and that front office are now of the mindset that Willie Green is not the right person for this team. He's completely lost the locker room from what we've been told. The players looked very disinterested in the game last night in Denver. They had that insane third quarter against Denver where I think they gave up a 28 or 29-2 run, and Jordan Poole was benched. Yves Missy was benched in favor of 37-year-old DeAndre Jordan at the center position, who just signed a week ago. So just nothing is going right for the Pelicans right now. It seems like that the writing is on the wall for Willie Green to be fired after their road trip. Once they come back, they have the Los Angeles Clippers and then the Oklahoma City Thunder. After that, it seems like that Willie Green could be in danger of being fired if the team comes back 0-6. And then obviously that raises questions about, well, what does the future hold for Zion Williamson? And that has been a talking point over the last year where Zion's had his health issues. There's been questions about his conditioning level and getting in shape. And this season, it does seem like that he is in the best conditioning level of his career since entering the league. He's committed a lot of time to doing so this offseason to get his body right. He had that slight foot injury where he missed the game, but he was back for that Nuggets game last night. He's making $39 million this season. He has some non-guarantee clauses in his contract, those weight clauses in quotes, that The Athletic reported on about a year and a half ago. So what does the future hold for Zion? Is he a potential guy that becomes available? And from a Kings perspective, is he a guy and an all-star talent that you would be willing to go out and get by sacrificing contracts like DeMar DeRozan, like Malik Monk? And I think that that's an interesting angle to kind of think about. If the Pelicans do decide to move Zion, could he be somebody that the Kings target, or will it be another contending team? Could there be a potential Paul George swap there with the Philadelphia 76ers, given that VJ Edgecombe looks like a potential rookie of the year? Tyrese Maxey's playing out of his mind. Do you really need to bring Paul George back there, or do you go out and get an athletic guy that could play with Edgecombe and Maxey like Zion Williamson? So that's a very interesting scenario in New Orleans, but if there's one team that is setting up for a fire sale, it's definitely the Pelicans.
Brett Siegel, sorry, Brett. Now you got me thinking. Just a quick one, very, very quick one, and then we'll get you out of here. I know you're busy, but you had me thinking, Brett, when you brought up the Pelicans situation with Willie Green and how bad this could get for the Kings. What is it? A 2-year deal with the 3rd-year option for Doug Christie. There's no world where, in your mind, Brett, even if this thing goes horribly, there's no world where Doug Christie doesn't make it past this year, right? I'm just saying, based on how bad this record could be and the schedule is to start, they're going to give him, for lack of a better term, I don't know if you're a golfer, but they're going to give him a mulligan, right? There's no way.
I would like to think so, and I'm kind of the belief that he isn't on a short leash, that they're going to see this through. They're going to see what it looks like. Players like Doug Christie, they hired him for a reason. They could have gone out and gotten any other coach that they wanted. They interviewed several others, but they decided that Doug Christie, and this new front office even decided that Doug Christie was the guy that they wanted to keep around. He has that 2-year contract, like you mentioned. I believe that he's going to coach through this season. Whether or not he is their coach next year, whether or not he gets fired next year, that's a whole separate conversation. It really does depend on how the season plays out. But I have not heard anything to suggest that Doug Christie is on the hot seat or will be on the hot seat this season.
Just had to check. Brett Siegel, thank you so much for joining us. National NBA insider and reporter for Clutch Points. Always a joy and very informative and entertaining when you join us, Brett. Thank you. We will talk to you again soon. Take care and enjoy the rest of your week.
You got it, Alan. Take care.
Great stuff from Brett Siegel. Be sure to check out all of his work, his Siegel Scoops, which are all over Clutch Points, and it keeps you very much in the loop on what's going on, not just with the Kings, not just in the Western Conference, but all across the NBA.